anytime I have a question, you're like, let me look it up. And you do such a good job of researching, but you don't, you kind of do some deep dive stuff. You go a little bit further even than I would when it comes to research. So I want you to share what researching for writing means and how important it is to a writer.
And as I was trying to compile all of that information, I was looking into, I would first of all start off with what is it that I'm wanting to relay in this story? Do I want it to be accurate? Do I want it to be historical? Um, and once I answer those kinds of questions, then I will go in and start thinking, okay.
Do you dream of adding your very own book to the collection of books that have already been written? Do you wonder where to start or how to finish? Does the idea of writing a book seem too overwhelming? Do you just want to polish up those writing skills or stay motivated? Do you wonder what to write about? Everything you need to help you write, stay motivated, and self-publish your own book is right here on one channel. And why? Well, because it's time to get over the writer's hump and just do it. You can write anything. Yep, you can write a book.
Hello and welcome to a book. I'm so happy that you are with us today. Guess what? We have a returning guest for you again today. Her name is Rae Baer, and I'm excited that she is here because not only is Rae a fantastic author, but she's actually sort of one of my co-ghostwriters. She edits for me, she proofreads for me. We are writing partners. She's one of my dearest friends, and I am so thrilled that she's here. Rae, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here because you're going to talk about a subject that is my least favorite subject. I shouldn't say it's my least favorite subject. It's just my least favorite thing to do. And that is research.
Research.
Yes. So
I love
I
research.
wanted you to, I know you do, and I wanted you to talk about research because anytime I have a question, you're like, let me look it up. And you do such a good job of researching, but you don't, you kind of do some deep dive stuff. You go a little bit further even than I would when it comes to research. So I want you to share what researching for writing means and how important it is to a writer.
Well, I love doing research, and it goes way back to when I was growing up. Our house, we always had a Webster's Dictionary, we had a Roget's Thesaurus, we had National Geographic, and we had, I think it was World Book Encyclopedia set. So I grew up in a household where we enjoyed looking things up and watching documentaries and finding out all kinds of good stuff. So that kind of went with me through all of my school years, and then into college. I learned how to do research for papers, of course, but research for writing, it is different because you have different styles of writing. And if you're needing to do any kind of research, you need to know what your genre is going to be. I mean, I know there are people that have certain genres like sci-fi, that authors that you interviewed, a lot of them have that one niche. But I'm an eclectic author, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but research is something that sometimes it comes naturally. Um, Sometimes it's just a lot of hard work. Sometimes it's both. And I can spend hours and hours and hours researching things for my books, or I could just write from knowledge, experience, life experience. But yeah, research is my thing.
Well, I know in one of your books, when you wrote a legacy book about it was your writings, it was a collection of your writings, your mother's writings, and your grandmother's writings.
Right.
And that was a completely different type of research. What were you researching in order to compile that book?
Well, one of the things I had was a big tote full of notes and manuscripts from my grandmother and my mother. And as I was trying to compile all of that information, I was looking into how much of it was their history, as in how much of it was accurate to their lives, and how much of it was creative writing. So I did a lot of uh, rereading things that they had sent me before. I asked my aunt, who is actually our last family historian. Um, I asked her what was accurate and what was story. So it's a lot of oral and just checking background stuff to make sure that I had things lined up correctly.
So that
Uh,
was completely different, I think, than what I usually associate research with, because I remember school assignments and we had to, and this is before the internet. Yes, I'm that old. And we had to go to the library and figure
right,
out which books to look in. We used encyclopedias, um, that and newspapers. We could use newspapers, but that was it. That was our source. And it was tedious. And sometimes you couldn't just put in one word. For example, if I wanted to research something about kangaroos because I'm doing a report on kangaroos, I couldn't just go to the internet and type in kangaroo and get information. And it was a
right.
lot harder, I think, than it is in today's age. And so that's what I remember. When I hear the word research, I remember long tedious homework assignments that I hated. But I don't think I would have minded so much going through a tote full of writings and trying to put together, in some ways, sort of a mystery, a puzzle of your own history, your own personal history.
Right. That was it was a long process. It took me about 2 years to get it all figured out, all sorted out, all organized. And I had files on the computer, thankfully, of each story as I saw them. I had notes and then compiled all of that together. So um, I did have a working file to look at and make sure that I was putting everything in the right order that I wanted to present it in that book. And then along with all of that, I was pulling from my English background because I always love doing essays and compositions and papers. I know I'm
You're
weird.
just different. It's a good different. You're a good different.
Okay. But with my own inserts into that particular book, I was pulling out, different writing styles, different writing genres, just kind of inserting because all three of us had slightly different writing styles. And so I was researching just to make sure I was still correct in all of that and putting that together. So yeah, that was a different kind of research that I did.
Then you wrote another book, and this one we're going to share it with everybody today, not a romance novel. And I want to give you an opportunity to, first off, tell us how that, I know the full story of how that book came to be, but how about you share that with the audience? And then we'll talk about the research behind that one.
Oh man, that was a wild ride. It really was. Um, you and I had been conversing while you were driving truck, and we were talking about something. And right now, I don't remember what we were talking about. Oh, I think it was at the end of the Legacy book. I had just
Yes,
finished it, and
yes.
I was getting it ready for publishing, and we were talking about what was next. And you said you need to write a novel, and we started joking about uh, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I can, but one thing I do know, it's not going to be a romance novel. And, and I said, I don't want a Hallmark predictable story. And we just laughed about that. So it was a joke to start with. And then all
It
of a sudden,
was.
we started talking about characters and how we can build this. And so after we hung up, I sat down and I actually wrote out an outline
Which I
And
think you sent me, if I remember right, you sent me like a little chapter, the
uh-huh,
opening chapter as a joke,
right,
really.
right.
But it was so good. I was like, keep going with it.
And I did. I
Yeah.
did. And it ended up being a fun novel to write. And I tell you, I've had a lot of people commenting about that
Mhm.
novel as it's gone out, as I've given out or sold the author's copies. People really enjoy it. So I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can do something like this.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a really
Yeah,
good book. It
the
was.
reason,
I'm not saying that biasly. It was a good book, and I enjoyed it because I got to give some input along the way. But there was some research that you had to do
there
for
was,
that because you not so much you didn't set it so much in a time period as much as you did a location, and you had some
right.
research to do, but it was a location that you were familiar with. So you want to talk about that?
Right. Um, yeah, the story takes place in two locations. One is Chicago, Illinois, and the other place is La Crosse, Wisconsin. I lived in both places for several years, so I was very familiar with the area. Most of the businesses that are still there, I was still familiar with. But what I wanted to do was research some of the historical aspects of those cities and how the story was revolving around those locations. And so I researched in La Crosse, I researched some of the restaurants that were available then, if they're still available in present day. I researched, and I did most of that by Googling the city, actually Googling the city. And you can get a lot of information when you Google a specific city.
How important do you think that accuracy is?
For
If you had just made up these restaurants and said, such and such a restaurant or such and such a building is in Chicago, and it wasn't really there, what do you think the reader would have a completely different experience?
it's possible if the reader was familiar with any of those kinds of places, they might wonder, oh, I don't think I remember that store, or I don't remember that restaurant. For me, it's very hard to not be accurate. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think I asked that question because I think it just adds to the validity of an author's writing. So, my husband reads a lot of books and he picks up on things if they are incorrect.
Right,
So he's a marksman shooter and he worked in law enforcement. And so there's certain things, if he's reading and an author talks about a firearm and it's incorrect, he knows whether or not they've actually held a firearm or done their research. And for him, it makes him not like the rest of the book. So I think the fact that you certainly don't have to be that accurate when you are writing anything. I mean, anything of
right,
fiction anyway. If it's nonfiction, of course, you need to be accurate, but anything of fiction, you can make up whatever you want. But I think the
right,
fact that you go that extra mile and make sure that you're putting in accurate street names, for example, accurate buildings, accurate names of working open restaurants, it just adds to the validity of the entire story, and there's no distraction that way. And then if somebody's not familiar with the areas that you're writing, Chicago or La Crosse, if they're not, they don't know any different. But if they
right,
are,
right,
there's no question.
right. And it's just important to me to be detail oriented uh, with those kinds of things. Now, if I'm doing one of your guests talked about world building, was that Adam?
Yeah,
Was that
no,
Adam?
we had Tom Fleming or Tom
Tom.
Fleming. I got Adam and Tom mixed up, but we had Tom Lucas on
Yeah,
last week, and he talked about world building.
world
Yes.
building. So if you're building a world of fiction, yeah, you can make up anything. You can make up towns, you can make up cities, you can make up street names, all of that. But if there's even an ounce of uh, reality in your book, you need to make sure that that reality is correct, is accurate in your description.
Yeah. I remember listening to a book, and the setting was in Kansas, in an area of Kansas that I lived for a lot of years. And it was obvious to me that this person had no clue as to what they were talking about. None of the things that they said were accurate. They described a place as a small town when it wasn't. They described something else as a big city, or as a small town when it was actually a big city. And it was a mess.
Hmm.
And I think if they would have taken, because you can Google this stuff, if they would have taken just a
Right?
few minutes to make it more accurate, I may have enjoyed the book a whole lot more.
Hmm. That's
So
true. That's true.
I know for me, when I was writing my last book, I I wrote it in my truck, and I would call you,
Right.
and you sort of let me dictate my thoughts of the book to you while I drove. And you did a lot of research for that. And that was a fantasy novel, but it goes from present day into this fantasy realm and then back to present day quite a bit. And you did some research for that. You researched recipes and time frames of certain things, and I was so appreciative of that.
Yeah,
Was
that
that
was
that was interesting? Was that fun for you?
that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It got confusing at times trying to remember what time frame I was in. Um, but yeah, that was interesting because you had the one of the main characters is a real person,
correct,
and we both wanted to make sure we were doing him justice,
correct.
um, and that we were as accurate as we could be with who he was and his characteristics and some of the things that he has accomplished. And so
Yes.
we
So
had
I'm
to,
just going to show that real quick. That's my fictitious encounter with Elon Musk. And by all rights, Rae did help me write this book for sure. She did a lot of work on this book with me. And so this is who you're talking about. We had to make sure that we were accurately portraying Mr. Elon Musk, correct?
correct, correct,
And it was still in a fictitious manner. It was still fiction, but
right,
we didn't put anything in the book regarding him or any of the other characters for that matter that would be blatantly inaccurate.
right, right.
Yeah,
We just wanted to make sure because there is a message attached in that to that book, and we wanted to make sure that we were presenting accurately the message, if this
yeah,
is making sense. So we had to do, well, I had to do
yeah,
uh, some extra research on that. And then one of the settings is this bakery cafe, and uh, we wanted it detailed. We wanted to have a description of what the cafe looked like and
right.
who came into the cafe and what kinds of things did the baker bake. I mean, and I researched baker awards, international awards.
Yes, and up
And
until then, I didn't even know there was such a thing. It was
yeah,
that little tiny detail that you added in there was just incredible.
it was interesting. I found out a whole lot too. Uh, those recipes that you mentioned, the baker was one who specialized in European chocolate desserts. And so
Yes.
I was researching because he does I think it's 5 different regions of places that are known for their chocolate. And
Right.
so I was researching, and so the rest, if there are any recipes, I don't remember if I did a complete recipe or not, but they were actual recipes for these actual chocolate desserts.
And so many
And
of these things neither of us had really ever heard of before.
right,
It was
right.
it was fun. Yeah, it was a
So
lot of fun.
it was definitely a learning
So
experience.
it was fun for me because I wasn't the one who was actually having to do the research, but I know you enjoyed it, and that's actually why I wanted you here today was because I know that when it comes to research, there isn't anybody that I know does a better job than you.
Well, thank
So
you.
that was a specific type of research that you did.
Right,
But then out of that came this idea for another book that you are currently working on.
right.
And the research for this has been,
Intense.
and the things that because I've followed you on this journey of writing this book, and I think this was another one of my truck driving conversations I had with you.
Yeah.
And this book, so I'm going to share this with the audience. I don't want to give away the whole book. I'll let you share the cover in just a moment, but I want to share this because I think it's so crucial when this book comes out that people have this background to it. As I was driving and we were discussing what your next novel should be, um, we said, well, we knew what we wanted it to be about, right? There was a
Right.
certain message. There's a message in this book, and you knew what message you wanted to convey, and how we were going to go about that. How to go about that. I said, well, it should be something that's set in a specific time period. And we said, well, what about the 1950s, right? And so, okay, 1950s. And we said, well, what if it takes place at a hotel in New York City? Okay. And what if these people are, I don't want to give away the whole story. And these are the details that we came up with just in conversation. And then you sat down, and I get chills when I think about this. So I can't wait for the book to actually be out, because you sat down and you started researching some things that happened. And lo and behold, all of the things that we had discussed actually happened
Yeah.
at the place that we discussed, at the time, in the time frame that we discussed. It was just chilling,
Yes.
right?
It
I don't
was,
know how much you want me to give away, so I'm trying to code everything here. I don't want to ruin it.
my term for those kinds of things is goosebumpy moments.
It was very
It was a
goosebumpy.
goosebumpy,
Yeah.
but so yeah, it's a historical setting. It actually happened. I'm building the story around that event. Um, the key character is uh, a young man at the time, and so doing some time travel, uh, where the book opens up in 1957 with this event, and then after that, um, it follows the path of these people, and there's seven or eight something, 7 or 8 characters that all came together because of this event. And so after that, they're following, we're following their journeys, as it were.
And
And
what's
so,
interesting is each one of them has their own unique history, and it's very intense history. It's not just
correct.
it's goes way beyond character building, character developing. In my opinion, it goes way beyond that. Now you're not just developing the character, but you're putting them into settings where this research is par none. This is like I've never seen anybody research so much.
Yeah, because going from 1957 to present day, there was a lot that happened. I mean, we've had people coming out of both world wars, Korea, the Korean War, Vietnam, um, just all kinds of things that happened in that span of time. And these people, they have to be involved. They have to be connected to what's been going on and how their lives intersect the events, um, and how they have pulled together. And the theme, there's one theme that runs through from beginning to end. And that's how it pulls together. So
I know it is a remarkable story, and would you be willing to share the cover of it? I know you're not done with the book yet, but you're getting close to being done. And when it is done, we'll have you back on because I want you to get to share the book. But would you be willing to share that cover with us? And I think you said you have a mock-up, right?
yeah,
It's
this
just kind
is
of
a
a mock-up one.
mock-up. Um, I've been having some technical difficulties, so it's not, I couldn't pull it up from my Canvas site, but
Mm.
this is what it is. The book is called Turn Now Turn, um, and it involves an elevator. um, so this is what it is. This is a work in progress. Uh, but this is
So
AI,
it's,
by the way. This is AI generated.
oh, and there's so much talk about whether or not AI is a good thing for books, or not. But you had trouble getting that cover made any other way, and so I think AI was very helpful, right?
It was
Yeah, and it needed to be specific.
right.
In order to tell for the cover to tell what the story is about, it had to be very specific, and I think you nailed it with what you chose. So
Yeah,
I'm
there was
excited
a
for that
lot
to
of
come
hit
out.
and miss. A lot of hit and miss, and um, I wasn't too sure about AI. It's still new as far as creative processes go. I mean, they've got AI for everything, but as far as the creative process, yeah, you do have to be very specific with what you want. And I learned it has to be simple. You have to
Yeah.
keep it simple.
And
And
you
I
really
was
wanted
thinking,
something simple anyway, in terms of the cover. So
right,
if you had wanted anything more complicated than what you did, I think you would have had to hire a graphic artist to do it.
yeah,
Because
right,
I
I
like
agree.
how AI will add an extra elbow or an extra ear, yeah, it does some crazy stuff.
Yeah, those first couple of mock-ups were wild.
Yeah.
I had arms coming out of noses, and uh, people were wearing clown masks, and it was like I
Yes.
never said anything like that.
It's pretty crazy.
But,
Do you want to share a little bit more about how you went about this research for
oh
this book for
goodness.
Turn Now Turn?
Well, I can show you my file if you can see how thick it is.
Oh my goodness.
This is information from this book. This
Just
book.
this book. Wow.
All of the other notes that I took for the other books came from files that I already had. So I didn't build this up that much. Even with the one that we worked on, your book, I didn't have nearly the thick file that I have right now.
Wow.
So I researched. Um, the main character is somebody that we probably already know who it is because he was around for like 60 years. And I went into his association to get some information. Uh, I picked up his autobiography
Oh
and
boy.
read some sections that were dealing with New York, his time in New York. I uh, got a couple other books, which were really helpful because they were telling stories about his ministry. He's a minister. And then I was I researched the hotel. It is a
Which
very famous
I
icon.
think that to me, that was one of the most goosebumpy moments because when we were having the conversation about this book, I said, I don't know, just pick a hotel. And so you Googled hotels in New York City and you just came up with the name of a hotel. And come to find out, this hotel would have been packed at the time of the event that you were writing about. So it was just,
Exactly.
it was like mind blowing because, you Google hotels, you can end up with 100 different hotels. And yet here you settled on that one just off the top of your head, and it turned out to be the hotel.
Right. And that hotel has quite a history. I was impressed with that hotel, the with the history. It's the biggest, most iconic hotel in New York City, which is amazing.
Which neither of us knew when we were spitballing this thing. It
Right.
was kind of funny.
Right. So it was amazing to learn about that hotel. Um, I learned a little bit about where this event takes place in New York City. It starts off at Madison Square Garden and then moved to Yankee Stadium. So I did a little bit of background research on both of those places. Um, I have so much research. Not all the research made it into the book
Wow.
because there was just so much.
But you enjoyed it. You enjoyed learning about it.
Right, right. And then when I got to the point where we're in the 60s and 70s, um, actually have a couple of people who were involved with Vietnam, and Cambodia is where another part of the book takes place. Boy, did I dig deep. I thought I knew about the Vietnam War, but
And
my
didn't you
research,
you interviewed somebody, didn't you?
I did. I interviewed a vet. He was in the Marine Corps and he served in Cambodia or Vietnam for I think 3 years.
Wow.
So he had some stories. We sat down one day and we just talked. I let him tell stories. So a couple of those things made it into the book. A couple of those experiences made it into the book.
And then, but this is
Other,
all done in a fictional way. So
it is
you took reality and
right,
you turned it into fiction, but it's all accurate fiction.
right, right. I would think that that's where historical fiction authors um, come from. You know, they can do that base research
Right.
and then weave the story.
It's just, and that's what you've done. It's just incredible. Did I lose you? Are you
No,
there?
we had that delay thing happen.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was thinking it was just incredible how you were able to take so much history. I feel like anybody who reads this book is not only going to be entertained, first off, but they're also going to learn. Like I feel like I've gotten a history lesson just from following you in this writing journey. And it's fascinating. It's just so incredibly fascinating. There were things that you talked about and I don't want to give away too much, but there is something that happens with some orphanages. And
Right,
these were accurate events, things that really happened. And you had one of the characters involved in that. And
right.
I knew nothing about these things until you started writing the book and were sharing this information with me.
Yeah. And realizing just how intense some of those scenes are because of the history and what they were involved with. Boy, I have a deeper appreciation for that time frame and those people because a lot of those people are compilations of real people, real
Yeah.
people's experiences. And it makes the theme of the book even more um, goosebumpy, I guess would be a good
I
word.
think relatable.
Yeah, relatable.
Because readers from various generations, you could have a 20-year-old read that book and gain, just an appreciation for it. And people who would be in their 80s who actually experienced and lived through that. And this would be more of I would think, as they read through this, it would be more of a nostalgic moment for them as they read through this.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well,
yeah,
how do you have that folder there, but how do you keep your research so organized? I mean, how do you go about it? Because there might be somebody out there who's thinking about writing a book. They know it requires research, but they're not the most organized people. I'm not a very organized person. So how do you keep it all straight? How do you keep track of it?
well, I do it by sections. Uh, when I was writing the section about uh, the original event, I had a section where I kept all my notes from that research, like the time frame, what was going on during that time, the event that happened, how it played out. So I had those notes in a separate pile folder, and then as I went through with each section, I gathered notes. Now, I know we can do all this online, but I like to have paper notes because I like to be able to go in and look. In fact, when we were doing our writing clinic, I had a stack of notes from a speech that was given. I had the transcript that I printed off. And as I was going through that section that I was writing on, I scratched out the parts of the message that I was using.
Okay.
So, and now I have that in my folder so that I can refer to it when I need to.
I think what's really interesting, this is just random thought here. When you're done with the book, are you going to keep that folder of research that you have, or
I probably should just in case.
yeah, for the history of it?
Yeah, but yeah, I've printed off maps, of
Oh,
Asia.
wow.
Uh, but yeah, I like to have the ability to still print off paper.
Yeah, because
Even
I think maybe switching back and forth between one tab to another when you're on the computer, you get lost having all those browsers open, having all those tabs up, right? So I
Yeah,
would think it would be easier to just have the paper sitting there and then you could just type right off of that.
yeah. So I don't think it's going to get any thicker. I actually, I actually pulled off my last little bit of research for the last section um, over the weekend,
Oh boy.
and it's like 2 sheets, 3 sheets,
Uh,
not 200 sheets, but
Not 200.
yeah, it's like 2 sheets of paper. So
So,
that's I'm going to be referencing that in the final section that I'm working on.
so does
Yay,
that mean that you're getting real close to having this one complete?
I better be.
Are you getting tired of working on it?
This has been a long process. I mean, so when we were still conversing about this, when you were on the in the truck, it was what was this
October.
one on about 6 months?
So that was October. We're looking at
Was it October?
7. Yeah, so 7 months maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. The other one came out an awful lot easier than this one, but
But then again, you didn't have near as much research.
that's correct.
What
Yeah.
advice do you have for people who want to research? I mean, certainly in this day and age, anybody can research something, but we do
Right,
have to be careful because not all of the information out there is accurate or correct. Even
right,
Google Maps isn't always correct. So you talked about maps. If you wanted to find a building, say that was in Chicago or New York or any big city, you can Google map it and find it, but sometimes that's out of date. They're not always accurate.
right.
So what's
That's
your
right.
what's your recommendation
I
for
would
people?
say, of course, I'm coming from the background of I'm an outliner. So I would first of all start off with what is it that I'm wanting to relay in this story? Do I want it to be accurate? Do I want it to be historical? Um, and once I answer those kinds of questions, then I will go in and start thinking, okay, where do I want or how do I want to develop this section of the story? Do I need to do any research? What kind of research do I need to do? Well, there are a lot of different avenues you can go. If you're writing a book that deals with, you use the example of law enforcement.
Yeah.
You need to, if you don't have knowledge already, you need to either connect with your local law enforcement office, see if you can get some interviews with officers, or if
Oh,
you're in a prison setting, you know, contact the prison office and see what you could uh,
would
do
it
to
be
get.
would it be helpful to show them what you've written and say, is this accurate? Does this make sense if I were to write it
I
this
would
way?
I would think so. I would think if you did that, most people would be willing to sit down with you or talk with you or email you back and forth and say, Yeah, I think this is good. This is pretty accurate for, hey, you need to change this. This is not quite accurate with today's whatever.
Mm.
Um, you know, it's just hard to say do this, 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 and this because each research project is going to be different. If you're
How would
doing
you help somebody over the fear of research? I have a fear of research.
research is your friend.
Okay, so this is my I love to learn. And to me there's a difference between researching and learning. I love to learn. I like to learn new interesting things, interesting facts. But my way of doing that is to Google it and be done. And if I can't apply it, it's gone. It's gone. But I don't want to I want to be able to find out something for practical use. I want to be able to use it. So I liked when I was learning how to make cakes. I bake and decorate cakes, and I didn't know anything about cake decorating several years ago. But when I wanted to learn, I looked it up on YouTube because I'm, of the school of YouTube University. I think by now I have a PhD in YouTube. I don't know. And so I wanted to learn, and that's what I did. But I certainly wasn't going to research the history of cakes or, you know, where did cake come from or anything like that. That's the boring stuff. I want to be able to apply it. I don't know how you do it. I don't know.
I think if you're using that analogy, and you're wanting to describe, for instance, a baker, um, you don't want to just say the baker pulled out the flour and the sugar and the egg and the flavoring and all that and threw it all together. I mean, you wouldn't do that in the first place, but um, you might go into the different kinds of cakes, different kinds of flours like self-rising flour,
Oh, that's true.
you would want to learn maybe some of the ingredients, the different kinds, because you can have an almond flavoring for
Makes
your
sense.
frosting, or you can actually crush up almonds and make some kind of a paste and all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
you could now, if you wanted to go, if you are, for instance, making the baker a key element, um, and the ingredients and the cakes and whatnots, key elements to your story, you might want to do some history, like where did the French pastry come from? How do you do the French pastry? Why is that different than what we do as baking a regular crumb cake? You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah, so I
so
guess there would be certain things you would need to know.
right.
Yeah. And it does depend. I agree with you. It depends strictly on the type of writing. So I once knew somebody who hired someone in his office. He was a writer who had his own office too, and not everybody gets that luxury, but he hired her to do nothing but the research. So he would give her the topic, he would tell her what he was working on, and then it was her job to research. And that's what she did. It was a full-time job for her. She was a writer's research. I think that is just, I didn't even know those people existed until then. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's just incredible. So
Wow.
you could probably do that, Ray, because you're good at research. So does this, let me,
I don't know if I want to sit
that
for
leads
8 hours.
me to
Huh?
another question. Do you only enjoy research if it's a topic that you're interested in? Or do you just enjoy research for the sake of research?
Yes and yes.
Ah,
I've just because of life experiences, there have been times when I've had to research things that I really had no interest in, but it was part of my job at the time to know about a certain subject, because I was, needing to be called upon for whatever, whether it was an interview, you know, whether it was a newspaper article that I needed to write that somebody had asked from the paper, would you give us some insight on this kind of program. Well, um, so there were things that I had to research that I really had no interest in whatsoever. And once that was done, like you said, it just went.
It's just
It just
gone.
went.
Yeah.
But if it's something that I'm really interested in, I will do whatever I need to do
Mm.
to get as much information as I can get um, until I get so saturated that I can get bogged down in the research and forget about what why I'm researching.
Because you're just enjoying it. Yeah.
So I can get in the zone. I get in the zone.
Okay. Well, certainly interesting stuff. And I do want to take a moment and share two things with our audience. First off, I want to let our audience know that if there are aspects of your writing that you're struggling with, maybe you want somebody to help you with that, or you don't know how to make a cover, you need a cover made, if you need somebody to edit your book, I would recommend going over to Victory Vision and Victory Vision Publishing and let them help you. They have some wonderful programs that they can help you with whatever needs you have. Some of your needs may be simple, or maybe you're out there and you just want somebody to help you with the entire shebang, and they can certainly do that. So we're going to take a minute, Rae, to hear from Victory Vision, and then when we come back, we're going to take a look at your latest book. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, are you stuck trying to figure out how to finish writing or publishing your book? Well, let me tell you about Victory Vision Publishing. Victory Vision Publishing is there to help you cross that finish line. They have package plans that are tailor-made just for your individual needs. They have learning opportunities where you can discover ways of overcoming some obstacles that you might have. Adam Fleming is a wonderful CEO, and they are a fully staffed team just waiting to help you edit, layout, maybe make a cover for your book. Go ahead and join their email list and check out some of the wonderful books and wonderful authors that they have already helped get published. Yep, Victory Vision is definitely the way to go if you feel stuck and just want some support in getting your book out to the world. You're only one book away from changing the world. victoryvision.org.
Okay, we are back, and you got to hear all about Victory Vision Publishing. And now, Rae, I want to give our audience an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you as an author, and we're going to show them real quick here. Oh, let me get out of here. Let's see. I want to show them your latest book that came out, and actually it's this has been out for a little over a year now. This is not a
About a year.
romance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, not a romance novel. And this was such a fun book. It's such a
It
beautiful
was.
story. It is such a great, great story. And so, yes, if you are interested in, let's see, I think if we click on your name, um, well, I didn't know if maybe some of the
Oh,
other,
I
yeah.
probably need
So
to go in and try
this is
update
My
that.
Legacy of Words. This is the book that you had the writings from your mother, your grandmother, and your writings are in this book as well. And
Right.
you told us that you had this big tote of all of their writings that you had to
Right.
compile and put together. So check this one out. This is a great book as well. And then Quackles O'Shanazy. I tried to say this the other day and I couldn't do it.
Freckles
But this
O'Shaughnessy McDuck.
McDuck. And so that was a fun one too. That was one of your mother's writings that you finished
Right.
basically.
Right.
And that was a fun one, but not a romance novel. I got a kick out of that book. That was just great. So yes, we're going to leave the link to these books in the description of this video, which by the way, make sure that you are liking and subscribing so you can get to hear from a whole bunch of other authors. But yeah, we'll leave the link of that in the description. Which one was your favorite to write so far?
So far, well, I had fun with Quackles, but I really enjoyed doing the not a romance novel. It was so much fun. The cover photograph is actually from my niece,
Oh, let's pull it up
and
again.
she was tickled pink. Well, she likes purple, so she was tickled purple. That I even wanted to use something uh, from her camera for the cover, and when she got the book, she shared it with her friends, and they did all of the oohs, ahs, and now we know someone famous kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of special. It wasn't, I mean, the story is great and everything, but it makes that much more special because
right,
now she has that. There's something you get to pass down to her. And it was
right,
so fitting for the book itself. So
yeah.
that was pretty great.
So
But
that
so
was nice.
did you enjoy that more than the one you're working on now, Turn Now Turn?
As far as it being well, kind of lighthearted, there's more humor in the not a romance. A lot of humor. Um, this book that I'm working on now is more serious. So it's not a lot of humor, but there is humor.
There's some comedic relief, I think,
Yeah,
throughout it.
yeah,
Yeah, there is. But you're right. It's a much heavier subject, much heavier
yeah,
book.
yeah.
So what are you going to do next after this one's done? Or are you going to tell me to just keep my mouth shut?
No,
Are you going to take a break?
I have some other projects I really need to focus on. So I will be taking a break from actual writing. And I still have some manuscripts from my mother and grandmother. So I'm going to go back into that tote and pull out what I did not use in the legacy book and sort through and try and compile all of that. I have several episodes on Kindle Vella.
Oh,
You saw
uh-huh.
on the page
Yeah.
there. I want to put them all into a book, get them all together and put them into a book. And I have some photography projects I'm working on. So I'm going to take a
Yes.
break from writing for a little bit.
Take it. So once this is done, we won't we won't see some new stuff for a little while, right?
Probably not.
Uh, Well, cool. I am so glad that you have been with us today. It's been interesting. It's been fun because I love you and you're important to me, and I know that our audience is going to get something out of this today. So I want to just leave the audience with one thought that I'm having about research. Don't skimp on the research. If you need to do the research, even if you don't like it, do it because it's going to make your novel, your whatever it is that you're writing, whatever it is that you're working on, that much more believable and relatable for your reader. And they will trust you as an author. I think it's really easy for anybody to write a book that isn't accurate, but how much do we really care about that author after that, especially if it's in a place that we are familiar with or an event that we are familiar with or some knowledge that and you don't know who your reader is going to be. It could be somebody
Right.
who is an actual expert on the subject that you put into even a fiction book. And so you really risk losing readers and credibility if you don't take the time to research. I think it's important. I don't like it. Not my favorite thing to do, but I do appreciate and understand how necessary and how important it is. Would you agree?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I'm happy to be your researcher. It's a lot of fun. It's a
Well,
lot
I'm
of fun.
glad I have you as my researcher and somebody to bounce things off of. Well, listen, you have been watching a book. We've heard from Rae Baer today. She's the author of Not a Romance novel, as well as some other stuff. Her new book, Turn Now Turn, should be coming out soon, and you will not want to miss that book. I'm going to go out on a limb, Rae, and say that that's probably so far your best writing. That's my opinion, but I think it's because I like the story. Anyway, you've been listening to Rae Baer. As always, have a wonderful day and God bless.